Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, stand up on your feet. We are here tonight to congregate the Holy One, college football. It's finally back, Nick. Welcome to the Saturday Sermon College Football Show. This is episode one. Episode zero dropped a couple days ago. This is episode one. We're going to dive into some fun stuff today. We're going to talk about our preseason predictions. We're going to talk about who we think are going to be the conference champions, who we think are the front runners for the Heisman, who we think is going to be the coach of the year. Most importantly, we're going to talk a little bit about the new college playoff format, and we're going to talk about our predictions for the playoffs, which, I mean, with not a single game played yet, that's kind of tough to know at this point. But last but not least, we're going to talk about these beautiful week zero games. They might not be pretty, but guess what? Football's back. College football's back, baby. So let's
College
get ready
football
to
is
rock
college
and roll.
football.
So, Nick, what are you thinking, brother? How you feeling?
Like you said, man, it's back. It is finally back. And you know what? We're talking about taking giving our picks and our predictions. And you want to know probably the most beautiful thing about college football is
What's
the
that?
fact that, or making picks is the fact that you never know what's going to happen in this league.
No. I mean,
We're,
I've been thinking all week, like, what if Florida State with DJU as quarterback, they just come out and they just crap the bed that first game against Georgia Tech? I mean, a neutral site game.
hey,
That's like,
listen,
ah,
and that's a young roster too.
it
So
is. It is.
I've been thinking about maybe putting some money on GT to cover. I don't know yet. It just all depends. But as far as our picks though, as I was saying, we don't know what's gonna happen.
No.
So that being said, the ex the experts, they're all putting their predictions out right now, and guess what? They're probably gonna look like ours at the end of the year, and it's gonna be completely off.
Yeah, but that's the best part about this beautiful thing that we call college
Exactly
football.
right.
It is, you can start off the beginning of the season and you can have all of these great ideas and these big ideas and these grand expectations and those teams that you can expect to win, their divisions and the teams that are their conference, excuse me, or the teams that you expect to make it to the college football playoffs could, squander out and not do very well at the end of the season.
Well,
So,
especially right now. I mean,
yeah.
you have 12 teams in. There's multiple games that have to be played no matter whether you're the first seed or the 12th seed. So it's gonna be
Let's
interesting, man.
It's going to be fun, man. So let's dive in. One of the ones that I know you are ready to talk about, Mr. Penn State. We're talking about conference previews and all that stuff. We're talking about who we're expecting to win different conferences here in college football. We're going to talk about the main four. We might touch on, some of the smaller conferences and all that stuff. But today we're going to talk on the main four. And we're going to start off with the Big Ten. So, Nick, who do you have winning the Big Ten this year? Why do you have them winning the Big Ten this year?
Ohio State. And I hate them. I hate to say it, but I mean, listen. When you buy a team, you spend 30 mil in the offseason and you don't win, you got big problems in Columbus.
And I said something to you a few weeks ago. I actually 100% agree with that. I think Ohio State is in a position where they win. They have to win. They've paid way too much money to win. I know a lot of people are questioning the whole Will Howard move. I don't think it's a bad move for their program. I think he was one of the best options they had available at the time. And with some of the guys they brought in, like Judkins, the running back, I mean, they're going to be fine on offense. Their defense is going to be fine. I think they spent enough money to be able to secure themselves in a couple questionable spots from last season. I really do think Ohio State's going to be good this year. I think I predicted them to win the conference. One of the big things to note too, I told you this and you kind of disagreed, sort of. I don't think their schedule's too tough compared to some of the schedules we're seeing out there this year.
No, looking back at it, I have to take games like a game by game basis and start
Yeah,
looking. It's not easy. I mean, it's not an easy
no,
schedule by any means. There's a lot of schedules that are, you know, a lot more like cake, but I mean, they still have some opponents that can play ball. But I just think that the level they're at, I have them penciled in as penciled in, nothing in ink, but I have them penciled in as 12-0 by the end of the regular season.
yeah, big thing. And this is no shot to you, and I know we go back and forth about Penn State. I think their three toughest games this season are going to be Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. I think that they lose one of those three games. I don't know who. I'm not entirely sure it's going to be Michigan, and I'm not entirely sure it's going to be Penn State. I'm not 100% confident it's going to be Oregon, but I kind of think that Oregon might be able to beat them. But I think Oregon might lose somewhere else along the way as well. That's one of those things that you and I have gone back and forth about in private quite a bit is that, it all depends on which Oregon team shows up, and it all depends on the play of their quarterback. I think that if Dylan Gabriel doesn't play the way they paid him to play and the way they pulled him into play, they have a really good backup with Moore just waiting in the wings that transferred from UCLA from last year. And I've told you, if Gabriel doesn't play the way he's supposed to play, I could see, that backup coming in and taking his spot relatively quick in the season. Both of those guys were both highly sought after guys in the transfer portal this year. Both of those guys have shown they can play. You know, if Gabriel is lights out, if Gabriel plays just 1 to 2% better than he played last season, Oregon's going to be the team that wins the division or the conference. But I don't know, man. I think Ohio State's probably going to be the one to win it all at the end of the day when it's all said and done. So big thing, Ryan Day and the rest of the staff. Like I said, man, as much as I hate Ryan Day, as much as I wish Ryan Day would fall off the face of the earth because of
He gets more. Yeah, I
how
can't stand the
disrespectful he
guy.
was to Lou Holtz, man. He did a good job this offseason.
But not only that, and when you look back, if you're a casual, you're sitting back and saying Ryan Day's got to go. He's lost three to Michigan. He's not a good coach. He's only lost to what, Michigan and Georgia?
Yeah,
I mean, I can't stand the guy either. He looks like that junior Pee Wee dad or that, little league football dad who like forces his kid to play. His kid's the quarterback, like 8 years old, plays a bad game and he just berates the kid. I've seen a lot of those guys and he looks like that kind of guy.
100% agree with that. So we both have Ohio State winning the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, well, just one other thing. Do you have Oregon as their opponent in the title for rematch?
Yes.
So here's my thing. I can see this going a couple ways. I have them penciled in as the opponent as well. The reason being, if things go the way you think they'll go, and you have an 11-1 Penn State versus an 11-1 Oregon, Oregon has to play Michigan, and I think they probably win the tiebreaker down the line. But I have I have a world, and I can't get it out of my head that I'm not sure Oregon's ready for the Big Ten entirely. I think that they're getting a lot of credit for not doing anything, and they do a lot. I mean, they're one of the top programs in the country. There's without a doubt. But I mean, what have they done to just outright deserve everything they've gotten? I mean, I, I think I think DeBoer outcoached him twice last year, Dan Lanning. I think Oregon was, and I called Oregon to win both those games.
You did?
They lost both.
Yeah.
So that's no bias there. I mean, I'm just calling a spade a spade. I can see in the worst case scenario for them not being physical enough to play a full length season. I could see them going to Ann Arbor and struggling because all Michigan's going to do is punch in the mouth. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying that the hype is huge. They're walking in like they own the conference. I'm not sure they're going to make it. I'm not sure they're going to make the Big Ten title. I don't think they're going to win. Now, on the flip side, I'm a Penn State fan, and I think they have the recipe to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I've been hurt in the past,
Yeah.
so
So, sorry.
I could very easily see a 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I'm it was a coin flip between picking Oregon or Penn State to make the Big Ten.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about quite a bit, and in private, I will never give them their props, but because this is a public forum, I'm going to have to. I think Penn State's defense is so solid. It's one of the perennial defenses in
Elite.
college football. Elite of elite. They are in the top 1% of defenses in college football. I think you match that up with an offense that is spearheaded by some of the best running backs, I think, not just in the conference but in the whole country. Who, I mean, I've told you this a million times. All three of their 1, 2, and 3 running backs could play at any Big Ten school and could play at just about any school in the country if needed. They get playing time. They play really well. They're so running back heavy that it's going to rely a lot this year on Drew Aller. And I think the addition of the new offensive coordinator from Kansas last year, I think is going to be a good thing for him. And you and I talked today. I want to see that freshman wide receiver. His name's drawing a blank on me right now, but
Kaiser Denmark.
yeah, I want to see
He's
him.
been creating a lot of buzz.
And that's the thing. I want to see
But
him get in and get in the rotation quickly. West Virginia is the first game of the season, correct?
that's
That what a
correct.
perfect game to put him in and to give him some reps against a really stout West Virginia team. Penn State shouldn't lose that game. I don't think Penn State will lose that game. Why not get him in there, get him more reps, get him more experience, so down the line when you start to play some of your tougher Big Ten opponents, you have a young guy that you can rely on that has reps in bigger games, not big games, bigger games that you can rely on if your receivers aren't doing what they're supposed to do. I think that was the big question mark last year was Penn State didn't have a true number one receiver,
And to
and that bit him
follow
in
up
the
on
ass.
that, to follow up on that, I will fight. I will fight for Drew Aller at this point. He gets more shit than he deserves. Okay. The reason being is because any casual fan that watched Penn State, they watched them in the two biggest games. And don't get me wrong, he didn't play well. He wasn't prepared, but I think that goes a lot into preparation, coaching, and play calling. And you have Keandre Lambert Smith as your number one. That guy's number three. I mean, he's a slot. Let's be real. You know, I think there's going to be a drastic improvement with this offense. And if they're able to catch stride like right through October, you don't know, man. I mean, I think Ohio State is probably just superior in talent. They play the same kind of football, and I hate it, but hey, they were in 2016 too. So
100%. But you did mention something earlier about Oregon coming over and being, thinking that they have all this stuff handed to them and thinking that they're the big dog of the Big Ten and all that stuff. What about the
that
SEC?
team out west, that
What?
team out west.
But what about the SEC? We want to move on to the SEC?
Yeah, let's go to the SEC.
So, the thing about the SEC this year, and I have been very vocal about how much I appreciate Texas football. I'm not a Longhorns fan by any means, but I appreciate Texas football. I think, and this is just me, I think the boosters are going to get in their way of being successful this year. And what I mean by that, and not enough people are talking about it, Quinn Ewers is a really damn good quarterback. Quinn Ewers can play ball. Quinn Ewers can't stay healthy. And I think that if Quinn Ewers goes down with any kind of injury like he had last year, who's his number two quarterback?
Year before, he
Last
was
year
healthy last.
he had a shoulder injury last year. He missed a couple games. Their backup came in and played quite a bit. Arch Manning got in for a couple series in a game.
Oh, that's right,
Yep,
because
yep.
Arch
He got
was number
hurt.
three.
He
I
got hurt.
forget Arch was number three. It was Malik
Yep, Malik
Murphy, who's
Murphy.
in
Yep.
at Duke right now.
Yeah, and if you remember, Quinn got hurt, I believe, in the Red River rivalry game, the Red River shootout. I believe he got hurt in that game because I came back from the pumpkin patch and his shoulder was all messed up. But I mean, he can't stay healthy, and I think that a healthy Quinn Ewers is going to be special for Texas. But I have a feeling that if one small thing goes wrong, they're going to be way too quick to pull the trigger and put Arch Manning in, and I think it's going to be a lot of pressure from around the team, and I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on Sark to play Arch because there's a lot of people that want to see a Manning out on the field, and I think that's going to be the downfall for him. I don't think Texas is going to be in. I don't think they're going to be in the number three team in the conference this year. I think they'll teeter around tie. Around tie for three record wise or four. I think Ole Miss is going to be the team that's tailing who I personally think is going to be the conference champion this year, and that's Georgia. I have the Georgia Bulldogs winning the SEC this year. There's too much stuff they've done this offseason that's kind of flown under the radar. They've spruced up their offensive lineup a little bit, but most important, ETN. You and I talked about this on the phone the other night. He split carries at Florida. I mean, he split carries at Florida, and he's coming into an offense that's already tailor-made. Now we're just putting fine-tuning and putting finishing touches on that offense. I think he's going to have an explosive year. I think he's going to have a breakout year this year, and I think he's going to alleviate some pressure off of Carson Beck. What are your thoughts about the SEC? I have Georgia winning it. I have Georgia going on a run this year. The only downfall with Georgia is they have a very, very, very tough middle of the season. I mean, they have Bama, they have Texas, they have Ole Miss and Tennessee, like almost like
And they're
one
on the
right
road a
after the
lot.
other.
They're on the
Yeah,
road a lot.
and they also have like Auburn splashed in between those games and stuff like that, which Auburn could be a spoiler this year
You
for a
know,
couple teams.
you know, I'm pretty high on Hugh Freeze. I
Yep,
think he's a sneaky bastard, and
in more ways than not, but yeah.
you, you s- listen. If it's innate, I mean, he's got it on the field too. I I can see them playing spoiler, and the problem is these conferences are so freaking loaded now that I mean, think of the NFL. I mean, you have the teams that are the dominant teams, and they slip up against some jump team. Now, granted, the parity's a lot less, with the pros, but still, I mean, this is SEC we're talking about, and they're playing the cream of the crop throughout the course of the season, which brings me to my point. I think they're going to play Ole Miss for the conference, and I think they're going to beat Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is getting in. They're a good football team, but their schedule is cake. They could they could sleepwalk through that schedule and make it to the SEC championship. They play Georgia, and I think I can see. I don't know why. There's really not much rhyme or reason for it. I can see them sneaking one in on Georgia, but then in the regular season, but then losing when the lights are the shiniest.
Yeah, and that might be a pivotal game for Georgia, honestly. I mean, that would be their first real hard game of the season besides week one. Week one, they have Clemson, which why book that as a week one game? That to me is insane. But I mean, that's their first. Well, excuse me. They have Bama, they have Texas before. Oh gosh, actually thinking about it now, you go from Bama, you play a game, you go to Texas. Ooh, Ole Miss might be able to squeak one out. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, you might be right on that, and that could be the turning point of the season for Georgia in a positive direction, though. Be
We'll see.
gassed out, be ran down, play their playoff in the middle of the season, and then turn around and just come back. I mean, in the conference championship game, like a bat out of hell, and just
I think they beat the
throttle them.
brakes off of. Yeah, yeah. I think they'll throttle them now. And so it was a coin flip. It was between Ole Miss or Alabama. The reason I went with Ole Miss being the upset on Georgia is solely because they play them after a length of some some hard matches and hard matchups, and they get Bama a little bit earlier. But I'm big on DeBoer too. I would not be shocked if Kalen DeBoer comes in and Jalen Milroe's playing like he's on fire, and they ended up sneaking it. But right now it's Ole Miss. I think there's too much hype, and they literally play an FCS schedule up until they play Georgia, which I guess in a way that could hurt them too. So
Yeah.
you never know.
One person I do want to note that I'm actually I wouldn't say my player to watch this season, but my player to watch kind of in the Ole Miss on the Ole Miss team. Of course, Jackson Dart. We're all going to say that, but they got a transfer this year from Texas A&M. Walter Nolan. He's a D tackle, nose tackle. Expect him to make a little bit of a difference, especially in the interior, especially against some of the high-powered run game that they're going to face in the SEC. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, he has experience in the SEC, and all that good stuff. But I expect him to be a little bit of a difference maker. As we know, Ole Miss wasn't the greatest on defense last year. They weren't, piss poor miserable, but they weren't, perennial defensive team. Their offense was really good. They weren't as bad as LSU when it comes to the discrepancies between offense to defense last year. But no, I look forward to watching Ole Miss this year. But like I said, I think we all agree Georgia's that number one team, and Alabama and Ole Miss could be that coin flip for that number two spot. So big one for us, Big 12. Got a question for you on Big 12. Who's going to beat Utah?
I think they're too complete of a team. I think they're better than they are what Ohio State is to the Big Ten to the Big 12, in my opinion. I just think they're across the board. I think they're the best coach by much love to Mike Gundy, much love to God, Lance Leopold, much love to K-State. K-State.
Off the top of my head, jeez.
What's that goddamn guy's name?
Anyways, it's going to bother you the whole time now.
Yeah, yeah. Kyle Whittingham is the best football. I mean, I've been big on Kyle Whittingham just in general. I think he's one of the best coaches in college football, but He's the best college football coach, and that team is just complete on every aspect. I could see them maybe slipping up to
You were thinking Chris Kleeman.
yes, yes.
I don't know.
Anyway,
We had a full
that
conversation
was
about
that
all
was
the coaches in the Big 12 like 2 weeks
that was a
ago.
weird thing.
That was a weird flub up by us both. Anyways,
Anyways,
but yeah,
um,
I agree about Kyle Whittingham. Like, I think he truly is one of the best coaches in college football. I didn't mean to step over you and kind of
no,
interrupt, but
you're good.
I
You're
did want to
good.
hit on that again. I mean, he's been at Utah for what, 20 seasons, right? It's
He's done more with less a lot of his career.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's been what, give or take. Yeah, this will be his 20th season. Last year they finished with an 8-5 record, and they finished with a 5-4 record in the Pac-12. I think a lot of that has to
With
do
a
with
backup
a
quarterback.
backup quarterback. Yep, that's what I was going to hit on. I think Utah, when Cam Rising's back this year, with him healthy, with him having 500 years of college football under his belt, probably can request 5 or 6 more years coming up here in the next couple of years. He's probably going to be the highest paid college football player of all time because he stayed in college football for 55 years and retired in college football. But when Cam Rising comes back, I think he's going to be a big difference maker. We did talk on this a little bit the other day one-on-one, but I think Dorian Singer from USC is going to be a big difference maker for them. You know, he wasn't the best last year at USC, but when he was at Arizona, I mean, we talked about he had 1,100 yards receiving. That's another weapon to add to that offense and that arsenal. I think the way that Utah plays football, I feel like they're a very, very tough
Love how they
football
play
team.
football.
And I personally don't think that their style of play and their tenacity was a good fit in the Pac 12 last year with all of just the insanity in offense in Pac 12 last year. But I think they're in a better fit now in the Big 12.
Sure.
I think
Now
this is the
I
perfect fit for him.
I do think if Cam stays in that season, I'm not entirely sure that Oregon and Washington are I could see easily one of them. I think probably did they I think they played Washington last year. Or either way, I think that I could have seen Utah sneaking one because they're that good. I mean, they deserve the respect, but I don't know. I could see them slipping up against, one regular season game. It's either K-State or Iowa State, but
Arizona. Arizona's going to be the one team that beats them this year. I'm calling it. I think I think
I mean,
Utah.
Noah Fifita and Tedero McMillan are
It's a good group over at
though
Arizona. But my thing
that
about
1-2 punch could play in any school.
I agree, but I think I think Utah they have they have enough tools to be able to win out. I really think so. I think that they are one of the few teams that I can truly confidently say I think they're going to win out. If they do slip up, it's going to be against a team like Arizona, maybe Iowa State. If they don't come out, ready to go against Iowa State, if Iowa State can find a quarterback rhythm pretty early on in the season, that could be a possibility. But also Oklahoma State is another team that could play a spoiler to a lot of teams this year. So while we're on the topic of Big 12, got a couple questions for you. How's Colorado going to do this year?
Uh, 5-7.
I think there's a good chance they could win 5 games, 6 games this year. I, as we talked about, Pat Shermer is going to be a great addition for him at the OC position. Offensive line spruced up. We don't have to get into a big argument about their offensive line, but they do have Jordan Seaton coming in at that left tackle position. Probably one of the best college football players that's never stepped foot on a college football field. I think he's going to be a saving grace for them offensively this year. I think Colorado's going to do a little bit better, but I think they have the dumbest schedule in the world, especially starting out with a perennial powerhouse. Not in the, or excuse me, in FCS in the championship series. They have North Dakota State week 1, which if they don't come correct, North Dakota State could put a beating on them. I also think the Nebraska game is going to be extremely tough for them this year,
That's gonna be a
and
fun game to watch.
we didn't get to
I'm
hit
big
on
on
that.
Nebraska.
We didn't get to hit on that when we were talking about Big Ten, but God, you and I will talk for hours about how much we love what Matt Rule's doing up there in
Dude,
Nebraska.
I'd run through a brick wall for that man, and I'm just some random dude in Southern Illinois talking football through a screen.
And if Matt Rule called me tomorrow and said, "Hey Joe, how are you doing?" I'd ask him, "What do you want me to do, and how do I need to do it?"
Well,
He is.
he was
I do
back
know
in the
that.
day.
I do know that. Matt,
So if and you know how I feel about, the guys calling for Franklin's head. No, it'd be stupid. But if it happened, I think Matt Rule would maybe be a guy I'd be like, hey, let's see what Matt's about.
yeah, I like I said, I just wanted to mention Matt Rule here. I think they're going to have a really good season this year. Like I said, we didn't get to talk on that when we talked about Big Ten at all, but I do think that Colorado Nebraska game is going to be a pivotal point for Colorado and both Colorado
Oh,
and Nebraska
both.
for the season.
Both.
I think whoever wins that game is going to have a lot of momentum going into the rest of the season. Not wins and loss wise,
No.
but I think more so
That could ruin a season.
I think it could. I
That
think it could ruin a season, but I also think the winner of that game could have a lot of momentum going into their future classes and all that stuff. I think more so
it's gonna be
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
I think more so Nebraska than Colorado. I think if Nebraska wins, I think a lot of people are going to start jumping on the Nebraska train. I think Nebraska is one of the better teams. That record doesn't really show how good of a team they are.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, I saw a ridiculous stat. It was like over the past like 10 years or something, how many one-loss games are like one-score games they've lost,
yeah, it's
or
insane.
how many blown
Will Compton
leads.
talks about that all the time. He
Yeah.
said, we're the best, 5-4 team in the country. We're the best,
Oh
five and
yeah.
five team in the country. Like, I mean, they're good. They're good. They just can't find a way to win close games.
Well, back to originally talking about
Yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
favorite
Colorado.
team. You know how I feel about it, man. Look, you can talk all you want. For the love of God, just back it up. I'm not going to take you serious until you do. And that's all I got to say. I don't really have any more energy to talk about a sub 500 team with all due respect.
There's a chance they'll be over 500 this year. Any improvements, good improvement for them. I just think the media
That's a hell of a
spotlight.
year. I mean, that's a hell of a
Yeah,
year.
I mean they were a
I
one
mean,
they
we
were a
talked
one win
about
team a
it.
couple years ago. Like they went from one win, and they're slowly improving. And it's like I think with the media spotlight on them, everyone thinks that they're going to be national champions in 2 seasons and stuff like that, and they're not there yet. There's still too many missing pieces. No offense, they're just
Deion's not there yet as a
he's
coach.
inexperienced as a coach. Yeah, and that's why I keep mentioning the Pat Shermer at the offensive coordinator position. I think he's coaching for a head coaching job too. I think depending on
Yeah,
how they do
yeah.
this year, I think if their offense it plays the way they're supposed to play or exceeds the threshold of where they're supposed to play, I think he's going to be either back in the NFL or he's going to be a college football head coach somewhere. I really do believe that.
I'm not totally throwing in the towel on the Deion experiment, but I mean, there's at this rate of how things are going, I don't think it's a winning formula, and I think he's gonna need to like Jim Harbaugh himself, where you remember how Jim a couple years ago was just a goofball, and then he,
He walked into Isaiah Wilson's house when they signed the Jordan contract at Michigan. He walked into his house on a recruiting trip, and Isaiah Wilson might be the worst professional football, the worst first round pick of all time. In my opinion, as a Tennessee Titan fan, he's the biggest bust in NFL history. Walked into Isaiah Wilson's house with a pair of Jordan cleats on. Isaiah Wilson said on a podcast, he said literally he walked in on my hardwood floor
back,
with a pair of
click, click,
cleats
click,
on.
click, click.
He said I immediately decided I was not going to Michigan after that. That was the dumbest thing you could ever do. So he went to Georgia and had an awesome career at Georgia and then just started doing drugs. But
Well, he cleaned up his acts because Michigan said, "We're going to take money from you."
yeah,
Now, the way he cleaned up his acts, some of those tactics are a little skeptical, but I will say, at face value, he shut his mouth and started coaching football, and that's the point I'm trying to get at with Dion. Dude, win
I
football
wouldn't say
games.
Dion needs to shut his mouth, but I think he
No,
needs to
no, no. I
tone
mean,
it down.
that's what I'm that
Yep.
that my point is Jim was kind of humbled, I think, a little bit and reeled it in a little bit. And I think the same thing probably needs to happen to Dion. And one of two things will happen if they have a shitty year this year. It's either gonna implode or maybe having some assistant coach help with some experience could maybe do him well. But the idea of Dion being humbled just doesn't exist in I don't know if it exists in the same world. And that's he is who he is, but
So I do have one question before we move on. What college did Deion Sanders go to?
Oh no, he didn't go there, did he? He wasn't. What did he say? He didn't. He stopped saying he went to Florida State, or he
But
didn't
he
claim Florida State.
but he went to Florida State, right?
Yeah,
So ACC, what are your thoughts on the ACC this year? I think I just kind of you just kind of gave me a layup right there, and I had to take advantage of
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
for the sake of entertainment. But I mean, personally, Florida State, they've done too much right the past couple years. I think this year they're going to come in with a chip on their shoulder like never before after last year's fiasco with snubbing them out. I personally didn't think they were one of the top four teams in the country. I think that the people who put the playoffs together, who decided on the playoffs this past season, I think they did it right. I think we got the four best teams that deserve to be in the playoffs in the playoffs. With that in mind, the expanded format, the guarantees, I think that Florida State is going to win the ACC. I think Florida State could run the table in the ACC. I think Florida State has a lot of great things going for them. I think DJU is going to pick up right where Jordan Travis left off, if not better than where Jordan Travis was. I think last year he was at Oregon State. I think that was a bad fit for him. I think this year he's on a great pre-made team. I think that Roydale Williams, the transfer back from Alabama, is going to provide a lot of thunder for him in the backfield. They're returning a lot of big pieces as well, and I think a lot of those pieces are coming back for the sake of the fact that they all have a chip on their shoulder after last year. What are your thoughts about the ACC? What are your thoughts about who's going to win the ACC?
I have a hilarious scenario actually that I think is very well possible. The 12 team playoff is a thing, and Florida State is on the outside looking in. They lost. I know you said they brought some guy. They have some guys coming back. They're like 80 something in returning production. I don't know if you see that or not. They are very low on production now, or on returning production. Now, this was actually probably my hardest conference to pick. And it's because you have three teams that I think are capable to win it, but you also have a couple fringe teams that are either going to ruin the season for one of these teams or possibly sneak their way in
Who do you who do you
the
think the most
game.
fringe team that could play spoiler this season is going to be in the ACC? I have one in mind, but
Got a couple.
who do you think is going to be that team that plays spoiler to some good teams? Mine,
There's
before
three.
you
I
go,
have
because
three.
you have a couple. Before you answer, I just want to say Louisville's on the top of my list right now. I think Louisville plays good enough ball against everybody that they play against for the most part, and they have that defensive end, that edge rusher this year that I think is probably the second best edge rusher besides James Pierce Jr. So I think that their defense is going to be pretty stout this year, and I think they could cause a lot of fits in the ACC. Do I think they're going to win a ton of games? No, but I do think that they could play spoiler to some of these good teams, if not one of these really good teams. But your thoughts?
NC State. Now, you're gonna hate this, but a game on the schedule that I'm like, uh, one of those is when they play Tennessee because they play Tennessee early. Now that game is a lot more critical to Tennessee than I think maybe a lot of Tennessee fans probably realize. NC State's not bad, and they got a damn good quarterback in Grayson McCall. That's one of the guys. That's one of the teams. Um, I don't think that Virginia Tech is ready to play on the conference championship level, but there's a lot going for them. They got Clemson on the schedule, I believe, and Miami. I think they can also very well play spoiler. And then the last team plays Miami and plays Florida State, and that's Georgia Tech. Specifically, week one, I think is very intriguing because, again, you have Florida State with a lot of new pieces in play. You have DJ who has always had the potential to be excellent, but he's never really reached that potential. They're playing week 0 in Ireland against a I'm pretty sure Georgia Tech is a pretty old team. They got guys that came back. I just think it could be a recipe for disaster. But
Potentially, I think that neutral site always does more harm than good, especially that neutral site all the way in Ireland.
It's across the pond.
It's
So I mean,
crazy.
the hour they're probably I have no idea. I don't follow the programs, but they're either there right now or leaving first thing because you there's such a time adjustment they got to get accustomed to as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, just to go back to the bigger picture of the conference championship, though, this is hard because I can make a case for all three of these teams. Florida State, you have a team that doesn't return a lot, right? But they brought pieces in. They got a head coach that knows what he's doing. They have some young talent, so I could always make a case for them. Now, you go to Miami. They are loaded when it comes to talent. I don't know if I trust their head coach.
Do you trust a young Cameron Ward
No,
after this offseason?
no.
I
And you took the words right out of my mouth.
He's good.
Mario Cristobal, he's done some obviously boneheaded things. I think he's one of those coaches that, and he's had some success, but I don't, maybe it's the brand. Maybe it's the brand of the U that I just don't trust because how many times, even back with Mark Richt, were they supposed to be, the turnover chain? They had all this stuff going and they fell on their face. I don't know if I trust the brand. I don't know if I trust Mario Cristobal, and I don't think I trust Cam Ward.
What game was it last year that Miami was all they had to do was take a knee? Was it Georgia
That was
Tech?
Georgia Tech.
And they
That was
decided
Georgia Tech.
they decided to play Miami U aggressive football and to jam it down their throats, and they fumbled a ball that they shouldn't. Didn't they lose like 23-20 or something like that in that game when they should
Yeah,
have
so
just
they
taken the knee and won?
he got stripped, and then they threw a bomb as time expired,
That's one of those things that
and
should have never
fans were
happened.
throwing trash on the field. Also, Miami's not a hard place to play, so I but Cam Ward. I mean,
Sorry about that. We kind of
again,
got sidetracked there about Mario Cristobal and some of the bonehead decisions he makes. But
but
Cam Ward,
Cam. I mean, Cam. He has some great talent, but I don't trust him. I just don't trust him. He's also played really poorly or made some pretty awful decisions in certain games throughout last year. So that's my beef with Miami. I think they are the most talented roster. But then you go to Clemson, which I'm gonna regret this at the end of the season, but I got Clemson winning the ACC.
so
I
I
think
actually I actually have them on my list. Not don't mean to cut you off, but
no,
Florida State is who I have winning. But I said Clemson has too many ifs that they can figure out and they can find a way to sneak in.
their defense is gonna be ridiculously good. I think they have I had some beef with Dabo for other reasons, but it's none of which that are football coaching specific decisions.
He's
He's a
just a
great
cornball.
coach.
He's a cornball. He's just a cornball.
Well, he's losing. I was just thinking about this the other day. If he could get with the times and he jumped in the portal and the NIL, from the time it started until now, could Clemson have another national title? Or could they have played for one? Could they have possibly replaced Alabama versus, Georgia? I mean, they were at that level, and he's just been neglectful. But that being said, I think I like their upside more than Miami and Florida's downside.
Yeah, and
So that's my pick.
like I said, I have in my notes. I said if they can solve their ifs, I think if Cade Klubnik can come out and play the way I keep going back to the quarterback play, but quarterback play is so pivotal with some of these teams and some
I
of
think
these.
he's going to be better this year. I
I
really do.
If he comes out and plays the way they expected him to play last year, I think that they win some of those close games they were in last year. They win some of those questionable games they were in last year, and I think that they could find a way to sneak in and do some damage and potentially jump over Florida State for that ACC championship spot. But I do think that at my pick right now, I have Florida State. You have Clemson. We can agree to disagree, but we both see each other's points, and we both kind of agree maybe the other team could flip flop for that number one spot. So that's awesome. No arguing yet. This is great, guys. So we talk about conference champions, and we talk about who we think we're going to win the conference championships. The most important thing is the end of the season. There's this thing called the playoffs, and this year the playoffs took a huge turn. So, Nick, let's talk a little bit about this new playoff format. Let's talk about who we think our automatic bids are going to be for the playoff. Let's talk about our 12 teams that we could see in the playoffs come to the end of the season. So, I'll let you jump in. You want to holler about the format?
Yeah, yeah. So it's brand new. I think there's gonna be problems with it. I think there's question marks. There's a lot of traditionalists who hate it. I personally think it's good for the sport. Um, but I think it's important to actually understand how it works. I don't know how many forums I've seen, whether it's people posting their brackets on the video game. They don't understand how it works. They think it's ranked 1 through ranked 12 when it's not like that at all. So you're gonna have some fans that are, teams of, they're of a 12 seed and they're gonna get booted and people are gonna be pissed. But essentially how it works, Power Four auto bid. So that's the Big Ten champion, the SEC champion, the ACC champion, and the Big 12 champion.
That's
That's
not technically, though. That's how it's going to shape out. But it's technically the top five highest ranked conference champions. But the way it's going to shape out at the end of the season, it's going to be the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. It's going to be the winner of
there's
those
there's
conferences.
there's never
There,
just with the way football works right
yep,
now, with the portal, with NIL, you're
yeah.
never gonna have that scenario. And honestly, after a couple years, I think that there's gonna be an argument to boot the G5 out, but that's a conversation for another day. Um,
Well,
that
the
being said,
NCAA was very adamant about it's not the winner of those conferences, but the way the rankings always
it's the
shape
winner of
up,
those
it's the winner
conferences.
of those conferences. It's I mean it is the way it is their
It's not
way
2007 anymore. I mean,
it's their way of giving these conference champions incentive to go out and play hard in the conference championship game, to fight to win that conference championship game, even if they know they can't go to the playoffs. So, for instance, an example would be if Georgia would have played Tennessee last year in the SEC championship game. Tennessee had several losses last year. If Tennessee would have found a way to sneak Georgia and beat Georgia, and then Georgia is still in the playoffs, and Tennessee's in the outside looking in because Georgia only had one loss, like it doesn't work like it doesn't work like that anymore. So you have the best of the best playing each other in the conference championship game, fighting for a chance to jump into that playoff spot, which I think is awesome.
well, look, so here's there. I mean, there's a reason that it's set up the way it's set up, and the G5 is always they're going to be the 12th seed, right? So there's a reason they do that. Okay, now there's some question marks with this system that I need answered, but I've not seen anything that's addressed it. Now, I don't know if the committee's just I don't know if the committee figured it out yet, but think about the implications of playing for your conference championship and how this can directly affect you when it comes to the playoff. Okay, so I have a scenario of, say, Ole Miss. Now, just to preface, I made a playoff. Like I made a 12 team playoff and I ranked them, but this piece changes quite a bit. It boots a team out and it rearranges a lot. Do they hold a conference championship loss against you?
They have to. It counts as your overall ranking or your overall win loss record at the end of the season. That's ooh.
How do you do that? I mean, if you have an 11-1 Alabama, an 11-1 Ole Miss that gets in because in my scenario they beat Georgia, who's also 11-1. Wait, no, no. Okay, scratch that. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is if you're on the outside looking in to your conference, say Penn State, say Penn State doesn't get in, right? Say you have an 11-1 Penn State, a 12-0 Ohio State, and an 11-1 Ohio or Oregon. Oregon gets the nod and plays. Oregon's now 11-2. Who do you rank higher in the playoff?
Yeah. Do you jump? Do you take Penn State and jump them over Oregon at that point? Even though they didn't compete for the conference championship game, which clearly, I mean, your conference champions show who's your number one team in the conference and who's your number two team in the conference. Yeah, that's tough. I think.
Because
Yeah.
think
Ooh.
if Penn State plays a tight football game with Ohio State, right? Oregon still makes it in by a tiebreaker. This is going to be a case by case situation. I
Hmm.
mean, and there's going to be a lot of teams that get pissed off.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's not. I don't think it's as flawed as a four-man playoff.
no, no,
I
no,
mean, do we
but
expand it to 32 teams or something
no, no,
outlandish like
no.
that? That's just too much football. I mean,
But it's
we
like
we would
how do
love
you?
it, but I mean, I don't think those players would love playing that many games.
How do you hold it against one of these teams?
I
And
get it.
not to mention this the way this bracket sets up. Okay, so what you have is you have your, obviously your top four of the auto bids for conference champs, right? Outside of that, the way it plays out is you have the number 12 seed playing the number 5 seed.
Hmm.
You have the number 11 seed playing the number 6 seed,
What you failed to mention is the number 12 seed is the fifth highest ranked conference champion,
the
which
G5.
a G5 school, which
And if you're not aware of
we,
G5 and what it means, this is the Boise States, the Northern
yeah,
Illinois,
your
the
Mountain West, your CUSA, your
Mhm.
American, your conferences like that.
Yeah.
And you think about that, you have a really good G5 team going and playing a elite perennial Big Ten team or elite perennial powerhouse in the SEC. It's like we've seen this experiment, we've seen this song and dance,
Well,
we've
so this
seen them
gets
putting teams that don't deserve to be in the playoffs because of win loss records and stuff. We've watched this play out so many times. Now we've seen it happen in the other direction with TCU a couple years ago, but I mean we've seen teams that weren't really that
it's a
elite.
diff
It's a different ball game.
it's a different world too with the portal and with NIL. I mean, these teams are never going to keep up. But that brings me to the point I'm trying to get at. So you get number 12 seed plays and not now this first one is that there you get home field advantage. That this isn't a neutral site. All right. So you have the number 12 seed at the number 5 seed. You have the number 11 seed at the number 6 seed. You have the number 10 seed at the number 7 seed, and you have the number 9 seed at the number 8 seed. Now, this is where it also gets more interesting is because the winner of 12 versus 5 plays the 4 seed. Okay. The winner of 11 versus 6 plays the 3. Winner of 10 versus 7 plays the 2. And the winner of 9 versus 8 plays the 1. So I got a scenario for you. You are on the outside looking in with one loss. There is a very strong possibility that the 5 seed is the second best team in the country, the way it plays out. All right. This is a team that didn't get in because of a tiebreaker. They lose one game and the way their conference shapes up, they're not in, right? Which is arguably we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it happen. How many times Bama didn't make the national or make the SEC in a couple of years and they ended up winning the title. I think it's happened the national title has happened several times. All right.
Hmm.
So you could argue that the fifth seed is by far the best seed in the college football playoff because you sit out the conference championship. So you're not you're not having to play the a you're not having to play a tough team,
Yeah.
right? With
I
that
mean,
extra game. Instead, yes, you don't get a home field or you don't get a bye, right? A first round bye, but
no,
you get
but
to play at home
imagine
against some freaking G5 that you're gonna
imagine
stomp.
Oregon versus Liberty. Like nobody wants to see
That's
Oregon versus Liberty. That no one wants to see Oregon. I mean, I wouldn't mind Oregon versus Tulane, but I don't think Tulane's going to be that team. But like a lot of people have Liberty in that number 5 highest ranked conference champion category, and I don't want to watch a team like Oregon or a team like potentially Texas or a team like potentially Alabama play Liberty. I don't want to see that. But
that but that's
it's
what
going to
I'm
happen. It's going to happen.
but it's even further it gets even deeper than that, right? Because you have arguably the number two team in the country who barely gets left out under circumstances of left out of the conference championship, right? They're number five. So yes, they are playing an extra game technically because they don't get a first round bye in the playoff, right? So you have whatever these two teams, one of them probably gets stomped in the playoff because it's not the best two teams, or I'm sorry, one of them probably gets stomped in the conference championship because it's not the best two teams playing for it. Now you have an 11-1 Alabama or, whoever it may be, the way it shapes out. Okay. They get They do play an extra game, but they don't have to play a tough opponent in the conference championship. So they get to take on Liberty at home, where you could win the game playing backups. Okay. So they have a better extra game as opposed to making it to the conference championship. All right. Now it goes deeper than that. The number 12 versus the number five. The winner of that plays the four seed, which is going to be the weakest Power Four champ. Okay. This isn't going to be an SEC football team on normal occasions. It's not going to be a Big Ten team. It's going to be an ACC, or more than likely, it's going to be a Big 12. Now, I love Oregon or Utah. I think Utah's great. I think they can probably stand the best chance against a number five. But let's be real here. They're not on the same level as the Big Ten and the SEC. So you have this team now, this number five seed who gets to play an FCS opponent to them, essentially, in round one. They win the game by 40 points. They're playing their backups by the fourth quarter. They are a rested football. They're probably playing their backups by the third quarter. All right. They're a rested football team. Okay. Now they get to play probably a team that's ranked 15th. So they literally cakewalk into the semis. Now, on the other hand, you have that team who barely snuck in over them. In my scenario, it's Ole Miss, right? You have Ole Miss that snuck in over Alabama. Say Alabama's the five seed, okay? Ole Miss loses to Georgia,
Georgia. Yep.
okay, in a rematch, right?
Hmm.
Say they get stomped like we were talking about. Where are they ranked? They're sixth, seventh, eighth. Okay, so say they're ranked eighth. Now they play the nine seed, who's a tough opponent.
Hmm.
But then if they win, they go play the one seed. So you're getting punished for going to your conference championship and
And
losing.
losing
And if they don't find a way to
to fix that.
incentivize that, you that conference championship money for those viewers, nobody's gonna give a shit about it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You're not
No,
gonna want
yeah.
to make it. You're
Nope.
not gonna want to make it.
Nope.
Okay.
You want to be a one loss team looking just on the outside of the conference championship game. You know, you're very
And
rarely going to have two undefeated teams in the conference championship game. Very rarely.
no. Well, it's not gonna
If
happen now because you don't
yeah,
have divisions.
no.
But the last point I'll make about it is you're the number five seed.
Hmm.
You cakewalked your way to the semifinals, right?
Hmm.
Okay. You don't have to play anybody worthwhile until you play the one seed in the semifinal. assuming they beat the winner of 9 versus 8.
Hmm.
But that being said, the number one seed still has to play a 9 versus 8, which is a significantly stronger opponent than that number five seed played in the round of 8.
Yeah.
You see what I'm getting at? And then number two plays 7 and 10. Number three plays 6 versus 11.
So it goes
Number
back to the
five is
age.
the magic number
It goes
for
back
the
to the age
playoff.
old question that we asked last year and a couple years before that: are the best of the best really going to be in the finals? Are the best teams going to have an opportunity to make it to the championship? And that's no. The five seeds that sweet spot.
The five is the sweet spot.
So,
And this is why this system is flawed right now.
but it's better than the
It is,
14.
it is, it
It's
is.
much
But
better than
I'm
the
I'm
14.
just telling you, by the end of this season, there's gonna be somebody that there's gonna be a lot of people that are kind of pissed off. And I do think there is reason to have question about it because there's issues.
So
You
do
know
you
what I
think
mean?
you think the automatic qualifier should be gone, or the automatic buy should be gone? You think they should do expand it and just do we have
Well, the problem is
we have one seeds on each side. We bring them together and try to get the two one seeds to play at the end.
give it less than 10 years. And I think that's gonna happen
A little
because
bit
you're
more
gonna
traditional style of college playoff system, like baseball and like
but
basketball and stuff.
college football, I think, is gonna be drastically different that from now than it is in 5 and 10 years because conferences are just getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah,
And I think leagues may be formed in different ways outside of NCAA, but that's a whole other can of worms.
there's been rumors about that. There's been a lot
Well,
of
I mean,
rumors
because think
about
about it.
that.
If you don't keep this system,
Yeah,
Big 12 champion isn't probably gonna the Big 12 champion or the ACC champion aren't always gonna make the playoff just by winning their league. Because and now it's he said, or it's based off of opinion, which are probably more times than not accurate. But so they got to keep it if they're working this if it's under the NCAA and they want to keep these conferences together and playing, that's what you run into.
man, that new format. Let's dive a
Sorry,
little bit in. No, it's okay. It's
I
okay.
went I
This is
went
what
I
we're here
went
for.
deep on that, but this
No,
this is something that
it's something you feel
blows
passionately
my
about.
mind.
It's something you feel passionately about. I mean, I still don't understand why they didn't just do two sets of number one seeds on each side of the bracket, and then they just rank. They split it in half. Half the teams on the east, half of the teams on the west, or call it the north or the south, or call it the red or the blue, and literally take the best teams and put them in and have them play the best of the best and go all the way down until the finals. So hopefully we can get the number one from each side of the bracket in. But the way we're just talking, we talked a lot there. But to recap, the new format, it's going to be a 12-team format. The top four highest ranked conference champions are going to get an automatic bye in the first round. The top five conference championships are going to get an automatic, or conference champions are going to get an automatic bid into the playoffs. Then after that, the seven highest ranked teams after that are going to make it into the playoffs. That's the format. Nick, let's dive in, starting with our automatic bids. Our first round bye teams. We just talked about conference championships for a long time here and who we think is going to win the conference champion or the championships in each of the major four. I think Georgia, Utah, Ohio State, and Florida State are going to get that for those first round buys. I think Florida State will be the 4 seed. I think Ohio State will be the 2 seed. I think Utah will be the 3rd seed. Excuse me. Georgia will be the 1st seed. Ohio State the 2nd seed. Utah the 3rd seed. Florida State the 4th. What about you? You think your automatic bids are going to
I
be
mean,
Georgia, Ohio State, Utah, and Clemson?
well, yeah, that has to be because those are my conference champs.
Yeah.
Um, I tossed around Clemson versus compared to Utah. Utah is probably going to be. I could see Utah being the three. I think it probably doesn't play out that way. It's probably so. I have Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, and Utah
You think
in
Ohio
that
State's going
order.
to be the number one?
Yeah, because I think they're going to go undefeated in the regular season. I think Georgia's going to slip up once, and it's going to be the last time it happens. I think you get Clemson sneaking in, and then you get Utah.
I just don't think an undefeated Utah is going to jump a one-loss Georgia in the rankings. That's why I don't have Utah at number one. I don't think an
Wait,
undefeated.
no, I didn't have Utah at one.
No, I'm talking about me because I said earlier I thought Utah was probably going to win out.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
Okay,
I
sure.
can't see a Utah being that number one seed. I don't live in a world where I could ever see a Utah being the number one seed. Even if they win out, I don't see them being the number one seed. I still see a one loss SEC team or a one loss Big Ten team um, being that one seed. Uh, being at Ohio State, being at Georgia. So the fifth conference champion, kind of the dark horse here. We're gonna say, just for purposes of discussion, that this team is going to be the 12 seed. Who do you think is going to be that fifth conference champion that's going to get that last automatic qualifier?
There's a couple teams that come to mind that have a serious chance. Um, it's tough. I mean, you got Boise State, you have, I think Memphis can get a fair shake. I think Liberty, and I think USF.
Really?
I think I could see you. I don't think USF is gonna make it. I'm saying I could see a world if they get the 12 that or if they get in, wouldn't be shocked by it. But I'm probably going with Boise State.
One of the things I want to mention here, and we like I said, we know how much I love Boise State. I'm a Tennessee fan. I'm a Boise State fan. We talk about it in episode 0. We touch on it a little bit. I think Boise State has a really good chance to be that highest ranked fifth conference champion. I think Ashton Genetti is going to be. I think he's going to get nods for a Heisman this year. I don't think he'll make it to New York. I think his ability running the ball is incredible. I think he's one of the best running backs in the country. I think he's one of those people that really would have benefited from the portal, just to be fair and just to be honest. But I think that Boise State's going to make a really good case at why they should be that fifth playoff contending team out of the five conference,
Bid.
highest ranked conference champions. So who's your 100? Do you have 100% lock on who you think that it's going to be that fifth team?
No, I don't.
So let's dive through 6 through 12. So my 6 through 12 in no particular order is going to be Ole Miss, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, Alabama, Oklahoma State, and the last spot, either Mizzou, LSU, Tennessee, Clemson, or Miami. I can't figure out who I think is going to sneak in there out of those teams. I put all those in. I think they're all. I think it's kind of cheating the system a little bit, I guess. But I think that some variation of this is going to happen. Um, I originally had down Mizzou or LSU, and I was thinking they wouldn't put in, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and another SEC team in the playoffs. They could possibly, but if they did, I think Mizzou or LSU will get in, or maybe Tennessee. And then if not, I think they're going to have to add another ACC school in there, whether it's Clemson or Miami. Your thoughts? Who's your 6 through 12?
So it's funny that you had several teams on potentially outside looking in because I also have five French teams that I wrote down in my notes. Okay, I'll start with number. Okay, so this is where it gets kind of weird because I made this as if they would somewhat honor the conference champion loss. Um, that being said, I have number 5, Ole Miss, number 6, Oregon, number 7, Bama, number 8, Miami, number 9, Penn State, number 10, Texas, number 11, I don't like it, but I put K-State, and then number 12, Boise State, with my fringe teams. Now, again, this if conference champion loss does affect it, I'm booting K-State out, and I have Tennessee as my first team in. Um, but I have Florida State, Michigan, and Ohio or and Oklahoma State as my friends, and my last one may surprise you. They're from Texas, but it ain't Texas State. It ain't Baylor either.
A&M?
It ain't Tech. Texas A&M.
Big coaching
Listen,
change. Big coaching change this year.
that is a sleeping giant. Okay, I don't know what Jimbo Fisher was smoking out there. I don't know if he's just an old head and didn't. No, no, I don't know what the hell happened because he had a top 3 to 5 recruiting class multiple times, probably, if you look the past 10 years that he was there. That being said, I think Connor Wigman can play football. I think he's a good quarterback. I think that they're very well coached and they got dudes, man. Like they've always had guys. All right. I think the hype is pretty real. I have a bold prediction that they beat Texas. Now that probably throws Texas out of my playoff, but I think that there's a very good chance that they beat Texas in College Station at the end of the season.
I could see that. I could see that. That's actually that's a hot take, but it's a good take. I think there's a lot of parity between our two lists. There's a lot of our
Well,
we had
let me see.
several teams. So
Right off,
I had Ole Miss, I had Oregon, I had Michigan, I had Penn State, I had
oh,
Alabama, I had Oklahoma State, I had Mizzou, LSU, Tennessee, Clemson, or Miami, and then Boise State.
no, I was trying to write that shit down, but you went too fast. But either way, we had a lot of the same teams in
or
there.
or same types of ideas when we were picking those teams,
Oh, yeah,
especially with
yeah.
that ACC. Not only having one ACC team in the playoffs and not only having one Big 12 team in the
Well, because
playoffs.
I think how it's gonna play out is I think actually what the hell am I saying? None of this shit's gonna happen.
No,
You know how it works. But if things happen the way they look like they should happen, I think there's a very good chance that Miami is a one-loss team. And that's, but actually, I don't know because I think I could see them losing to Florida at the beginning of the season because Billy Napier has a lot at stake and he is playing Murder's Row the rest of the season. And I don't trust Miami. So yeah, you know what? I'm already going back on what I'm saying. Get them out of my bracket.
it's gonna change a bunch of times after week 0. It's gonna
Oh
change a
yeah.
bunch of times over the next coming
Yep.
week. We can give midseason, picks and stuff like that, and kind of, go back and look at some of these old videos and
Reevaluated how
reevaluate
a whole
everything. Yep. But another really prominent thing that happens after the college football season is the Heisman Trophy. Um, I don't know about you, but I have 4 to 5 people in mind for the Heisman. I actually have 6, but
I got six.
I have 5 down on paper. I have my 4 that I think are going to make it to New York, but then I have 1 to 2 guys that I think could jump in and surpass one of those 4 guys on the list. But I mean, my top 4. Just going to rattle those guys out and then talk about my 2 that I think could jump in is Carson Beck. I think if Georgia does what they're supposed to do, it doesn't matter how great of a season he has. All he has to do is play 1 to 2% better than he did last year, and Carson Beck is going to be there if he plays
I
the
don't
way
even know if he's got to play better, to be honest.
if
I
he
think Georgia's just got to let him go.
if he plays the way he finished the season, especially, I think he's going to make it. I think Jackson Dart has a lot at stake this year. I think Jackson Dart is one of those guys that could jump in there and make a big splash this year. Big thing about Jackson Dart this year, he's got a good supporting cast around him with a lot of momentum going into the season. I think his overall ability on the field is better than most of the quarterbacks in college football right now with the combination of arm strength and the combination of athleticism and mobility. I do think he struggles from time to time when it comes to like high pressure throws, which that kind of bit them in the butt a few times last year I think he has issued like threading the needle to say. But I think there's a lot of athleticism around him. There's a lot of great players around him that I think he's going to make it. Dylan Gabriel, I have Dylan Gabriel up there. I as much as I would love to see Oregon lose, not because I don't like Oregon. I don't know the team out west or whatever they're wanting to be called.
Okay, so we're on the same page then.
I think Dylan Gabriel is going to make it in. I think he's going to do a lot. I
His
don't think
stats are going to be gaudy. I
I
mean, it's
yep. He's going to have awesome stats. I don't think that Will Howard's going to have the stats that Gabriel has. I think they're going to rely on Judkins and their run game a little bit more on the offensive side of things. They are returning a few good receivers, but I don't think Will Howard's going to make it. And then I have that fourth spot going to, you ready? The best running back in the Big 12. Now, I have Ole Gordon down, but I
So
also
that's not who
have
you're talking about.
I also have Tajay Brooks down as well from Texas Tech. I think that whoever out of the two of those running backs, and I don't care win loss record aside, I think Marvin Harrison set a precedence that they're going to have to start inviting one skill position player in there outside of a quarterback position. I think one of those two guys are going to get invited. I think whoever's the better rusher out of those two guys is going to get invited. I mean, you think about it. I mean, Tajay last year had what? He had, was it 1,400 yards rushing last year? Was it 13, 1,400 yards rushing? It was 1,500 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. And then, you had Ole Gordon, who had like, 1,700 yards rushing last year or whatever it was, some absurd amount. I think that, whoever is the best running back in the Big 12 is going to make it in that four spot. Now, the guy that I have on the outside looking in, so Tajay Brooks is my fifth guy. Sixth guy, Milrow. I think Jalen Milrow, if he does what he can do and what he's capable of doing and what Alabama is capable of doing, and with that splash of the new DeBoer taste into the Alabama offense, I think there's a good chance he can make it in and he could jump somebody like a Jackson Dart.
Our lists are very similar. Um, I think it shapes out a couple different ways. I don't think there's a way you leave Carson Beck off the list. He's just the kid's good. I mean, his numbers were great last year, and they didn't really let him just let him throw it and let him play ball. Like they should have let him off the leash a lot earlier. But I think they're a little, you know, eerie on it. But I mean, he threw for over 4K, I believe, last year.
They were
And
also they were also overly reliant on Brock Bowers last year, and I think once Brock Bowers went down, I think they started to figure it out a little bit more. And then when Brock Bowers came back, it was like the perfect piece of gel to be able to hold everything together.
well, I think a big piece of this too, and we talked about it a couple of days back, is the Heisman race is going to look a lot different now that there's a 12-team playoff because there are more rounds and the way it shapes up, guys are going to have more opportunities to show what they can do in clutch situations because there's going to be more people invited to the playoff. And so it's going to matter more, right? It used to be that if you got your team to the playoff and you have the best stats pretty much as a quarterback, you're probably going to win it. At the very least, you're going to be up there and you're going to get votes. You're going to be in New York. I don't think that's the case anymore because you got 12 teams in there. You could lose 3 games theoretically and still make the playoff. You probably, the way it's shaping out, I don't know if a 9 or a 3 loss team gets in this year. But Florida would be maybe the only one, but that's besides the point. Um, it's going to be a lot harder to get the Heisman because you're going to have to prove yourself a little bit deeper and you're going to have more chances to play in clutch situations. So I think that shapes it out a lot of different ways. Now, with Carson Beck, I don't think he wins the Heisman. And I think he's a shoe-in to be invited because he's going to have good
Agree.
numbers and
Agree.
he's also going to take his team probably to a national championship. Um, but he doesn't win it because Georgia plays too good of complementary football. And I think that's what keeps him away from winning it. Um, Number two that I wrote down is the last one you wrote down, and it's Jalen Monroe. That's not necessarily in an order, but I mean, this is how they came to mind. Jalen Milroe, I think he really hit his stride last year at the end of the season. I mean, to take them to beat Georgia, which arguably was a playoff football team. You know what I mean? I would have loved to see Georgia play Michigan, actually. That I think that would have been, I mean, the Bama game was amazing, but I think Georgia was probably the one team that truly stood a chance to beat Michigan. Um, but he hit his stride. And just like you were saying, I think I have a lot of faith in Kalen Bohr. I think that look what he did with Michael Penix. He took raw talent and refined it, and he got him up there, in New York. I think Jalen
He did
Rose,
have a lot of time with Michael Penix though too, because he was his OC at
sure, sure.
Indiana, correct?
Yes. Yeah, he was. But I think that I think Jalen, his athleticism alone is freakish. I think he can throw the ball a lot better than he gets credit for, especially the deep ball. But he can run the football too. And if you're a dual threat, your Heisman chances, I think, just go up. Third guy, Jackson Dart. My biggest thing is with like against him being up there is last year they ran the ball more than they passed the ball. Granted, uh, they lost Judkins,
Judkins,
so
yep,
I
yep.
think they're gonna lean on Dart a lot more. So that can either help him or hurt him. You know what I mean? If he is leaned on and he comes through, then his stock is going through the roof. If he falls short because they need to rely on him a lot, that changes things. I got Jalen Daniels. This is a huge question mark because I think he has all the talent in the world. And I think he probably gets a little more grace than some of these teams on these blue bloods because if he can take KU
Yeah.
to compete to maybe get into the playoff and he stays healthy with what he's capable of doing, I can 110% see them giving him votes solely for that.
When he's one of those guys that we're both super high on.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just a big question mark.
if he can stay healthy, I mean, he had was it back spasms all last year to the point where he missed several games for him. But the kid, he's a dual threat. He's insane. He's incredibly athletic. He's a smart ball player. He's fun to watch. If he can stay healthy this season, I mean, we might even be talking about KU finding a way to sneak into that playoff
Yeah,
contention. But
absolutely. 100%. There's
yeah,
just, and the reason KU's not so much in the mix with me because it's a gamble to bet on them. But next I have Quinn. Quinn's gonna have weapons. Quinn is a good football player. He's a good quarterback. Not quite sure if he wins it because I'm not sure that Texas is gonna have it in them to really, you know, really go down late in the season and get some wins. I with losing their running back too, like how much are they going to rely on solely Quinn to be the hero? They also were not great. I I forget the stat. It's like their third down percentage or something. They could not get many tough yards, like short yardage situations, even, outside of not having their running back. So I think they're going to lean on him a lot. Again, same situation with Jackson Dart. It's going to either be for the better or for the worse. We'll see. I do have Dylan Gabriel on there because he's just going to throw. His numbers are going to be sickening. Um, I don't know if he wins it because I'm not as high on the Ducks as, you know, a lot of people, but he's up there. Really for dark horses, I mean, again, this is a quarterback award. Let's just be real. Um, the only other dark horse I have is you guessed it, a quarterback in Noah Fifita. I think that kid is a freak athlete. I just don't think that Arizona is gonna really do a whole lot in significant times. So I think that probably keeps him out.
so Heisman, we got our picks. We got the guys that we think are going to be there in New York. It could be 100% accurate. It could be 100% wrong. But we I think we have one clear consensus on a postseason award, and wanted to ask your thoughts on who you think is going to win the Coach of the Year this year.
I hate this one because of the guys that I think stand a very great chance. One of them I love. Two of them I despise. And The last one is he's teetering between I don't like this guy and all right, he's okay. I think the guy that I truly think there
Before you start, do we both hate one of them?
yes,
Do you hate the other one and I actually really like the other one?
you are accurate.
And then the last one we both love and we probably have as our favorite.
He's actually not my favorite, but I mean, he's my favorite. He's near and dear to my heart, my favorite, but he's not the betting favorite to win this award to me.
All right, go ahead and rattle them off and I'll just smile the whole time.
The one we didn't talk about is Dan Lanning. Lots at stake. I personally don't think Oregon's ready this year. I think that if things do work out the way they work out, he's a shoe-in. 100% going to get the award. Next guy is Ryan Day. It makes I feel sick to my stomach even saying it because that guy's he's just a prick. I don't know how to I don't know how to put it any simpler. Can't stand the guy, but I mean he's got the what they did in the offseason, even though it's not the football that I love, it's the reality of what college football is becoming now. He got pieces. He they put together probably the best roster in college football. The guy's not a bad coach, and I think this is probably the year where he's able to prove it. My guy that I love, Kyle Whittingham, I think that just the way things are rolling, he already found his successor. I think the writing's on the wall. He's getting close to hanging it up. I think that the Utes could really do some damage and have a lot of respect, not just in the Big 12, but on the national scene. Um, man, the guy just knows his stuff, and he's due. Honestly, he's due for one. The guy I think that probably wins it, and I don't like to say this either, because one, I don't necessarily think they deserve it because they have a cakewalk of a schedule, but it's Lane Kiffin. They're going to skate on by and get there. They're probably going to sneak one in on Georgia, who's just went through murder's row. And Lane Kiffin is going to look like the superhero that everybody painted him out to be for his whole entire career. And all he's done that whole time is disappointed. And he's also acted like a prick his whole way through. But he's going to look like this knight in shining armor. He's going to look like the reincarnation of Nick Saban. And he's going to be the goddamn coach of the year.
What more can I say? The only one that I don't have on my list is Dan Lanning. I think Kyle Whittingham is my favorite for it. I think Ryan Day, as much as I hate his beet red face and his high blood pressure and all that,
Is just for men.
his just for men Kiwi, was it Kiwi black or whatever
I
that
don't know what it
color
is,
is?
dude. He looks
He's
ridiculous.
ridiculous. But Ryan
Probably
Day,
spray tans too.
and then the one that so that's the one we both hate. The one that we both love is Whittingham, and the one that you hate and I love is Lane Kiffin. I like Lane Kiffin's swagger. I
He's
like
such a
everything about
dick.
Lane Kiffin. I think he's one of those people that sometimes is too straightforward. He's one of those people that is not afraid to tell you you're an asshole. I mean, look what he's done with, was it Finnenbaum, where he literally called him out on his show? Like, I love Lane Kiffin. I would love to see Lane Kiffin win the Coach of the Year. But it's just funny how we know each other well enough that we talk football well enough, or enough with each other that we had the same picks, and I knew exactly who his picks were going to be. That's fun. That's an awesome dynamic. This is why we're doing this. I mean, we have difference of opinions, but we know a lot about ball, and we also have a great opportunity to watch enough games and to hang out with each other and talk with each other enough that we kind of can read each other pretty well. So that's my three: is Ryan Day, unfortunately, Lane Kiffin, which would be great, and Kyle Whittingham would be great as well.
No, I'd be thrilled to see Kyle Whittingham.
I think the world would be thrilled. I think college football would be thrilled. There's one more person that wasn't
I think I'd
mentioned.
vote for him for president, but that's might be my
There's
biased
one.
college
There's one
football
more
opinion.
person though that wasn't mentioned that I wouldn't say he's a dark horse because of what he's done, but I do think Kalen DeBoer at Alabama has an awesome opportunity to win Coach of the Year this year.
Well, he just won it last year, so that's
Yep,
why I'm like, are they good?
and
Because he would
that's
have been on my list too.
he's got to replicate the success or exceed the success from last year, and that's what I was going to say. I think that if he can come into Alabama and do better than what they were last year, and take him to the playoffs and all that stuff. I mean, first year in a program, things like that. I
He's
think
got he's got pressure too.
he does have a lot
Like
of pressure. I mean, you see, he just
and it's
redid Nick
not going to be
Saban's office.
yeah.
He completely renovated Nick Saban's old office. He made it more modernized, which was very creepy to look at. But I think he's got a chance
That
too.
no, he's gonna be awesome. I think that he's gonna get criticized if he doesn't go out and just replicate an unreplicable career, you know. But those are big shoes to fill. But I mean, I think they got the right guy.
I can see that. Last thing before we sign out, week 0 is here, baby. We're getting rolling in some college football this weekend, this Saturday. We got a handful of games. Some of them great, some of them not so great, some of them actual toilet bowls. First and foremost, the game of the week, Florida State versus Georgia Tech. Neutral site
Easy
game,
pick.
Dublin,
Easy
Ireland.
pick.
The lines right now, money line is minus 440, Florida State. The point spread, 10.5, Florida
And
State.
then a half now.
10.5. The over, the under, 55.5. Nick, I've got Florida State money line. I think Florida State's going to win. If I could pick the over as well, I would take the over as well. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I think there's a lot of points going to be scored by Florida State, honestly, in this game. But I mean, I think Florida State's winning this game hands down.
Yeah, I don't see Georgia Tech really beating them. It's more of a if they upset them, I wouldn't totally be shocked. Um, I do think they stand a very good chance at covering. Now that was like I thought it was like 11 and a half, so I don't know if it's like kind of creeping down. That may change my view on it, but I could see them covering. I don't necessarily know if I see a ton of points being scored solely for the fact that you have a quarterback in a brand new system and you have a Georgia Tech team playing a stout defense. Um,
Wasn't
so
there a
I'm
lot
not
of
sure if I want
points?
to take.
Wasn't there a similar situation last year though in the Dublin game?
Okay, you had Navy versus
Notre Dame,
Notre Dame. Yeah,
first year quarterback in a new system with Sam Hartman. A lot of points were scored. A
but they
lot
also
of points were
played. They
scored.
also played. They also played Navy.
Yeah, good point. Next game. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the toilet bowl game of the week. Montana State versus New Mexico. Montana State is favored, minus 455.
I gotta check that because I believe you,
The
but
over is 54 points. The point spread is minus 11.
I'm gonna. It'll be on the TV at some point because I'm in the holiday spirit of college football, but I don't really care too much about it.
Who do you think wins, Montana State or New Mexico?
Your guess is as good as mine. Let me flip a coin and pick.
I'll take Montana State just because New Mexico is just historically bad. New Mexico is horrible. New Mexico's independent this year, or is that New Mexico State that's independent?
I think it's the Lobos. I don't know.
That's
I
right.
don't know.
Anyways, it's a shitty game. I don't really care about that game, but I'm going to watch it. Got the 6 TVs rolling. We're going to be fun, and we're going to have a great time watching games. Next game. This might be the the biggest money line we'll see all season. SMU at Nevada. SMU is favored. The money line is minus 2,100 versus Nevada. So you know SMU is going to win. We know SMU is going to win. Nevada's not even going to
What's the spread?
56 points is the
Oh my.
56 points is the over. The spread is
Oh, okay,
25 for SMU.
Oh, just 25. I'm
Yeah,
taking
it is week 0 though, and you never know. Some teams could.
it doesn't matter, dudes.
Yeah, you're right.
SMU is gonna They might put up 70.
Well,
Give me SMU with the points.
I'm taking SMU with the over on their own. I
I
mean,
might just I might just bet $5 on Nevada because in the off chance it wins, I'm probably making some
you're making some
money.
good money, but it's not going to happen.
No.
That's stupid betting, stupid things, stupid betting. But I'll wear the hat for you. I'll wear the positive vibes only hat for you. Last game. This is my toilet bowl game of the week. This is
Mind you, this is something that we want to do moving forward here. It's our toilet bowl game of the week.
toilet bowl game of the
Not
week.
that anybody wants to see bad football, but hey, it's there for somebody, and somebody will take this as a prestigious award at some point. But here it is.
Now, would you believe me if I told you they have Hawaii 39 points, the favorite.
You didn't say who's playing. You just said Hawaii.
Delaware Delaware State versus Hawaii
Here we go.
in Hawaii.
Did you see that they missed their flight, Delaware State,
I,
due to some issue with a bus? I didn't get to read it. I was
was
busy
it
at work.
was it last year's? And the reason why I want to do the toilet bowl
They
game of the
missed
week,
their flight to the
the,
game.
the reason why I want to do toilet bowl game of the week is not because I want to make fun of these teams, but I want to draw people's attention to football that could be so bad that it could be enjoyable. Okay. And with that in mind, Hawaii versus Vanderbilt was the toilet bowl game of the week, week 0 last year, if I'm not mistaken. Again, they're playing Delaware State, East Coast team, going all the way to Hawaii to
Well, they
play
may not. They missed their flight. So.
play an 11 o'clock Central Time Zone game. So that would be midnight in Delaware. So we got sleep schedules. We got all of that stuff that we have to come accustomed to. Why would they make this matchup? There's not even a money line on this game, Nick. There's literally the money line's locked. It's been locked since the game's been released. With that in mind, I'm sure we both agree Hawaii's probably going to win this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know a single thing about either team other than they're the toilet bowl game of the week.
Now, the best part about this game is that Nick will get a phone call from me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Man, did you just see that last play of the Hawaii Delaware State game?" And Nick will say, "Bro, I'm sleeping." The
No, I
re-
won't respond to you until
the next
8 a.m.
morning,
Say,
I'll
no, what
send you
happened?
45 text messages, bro, Hawaii, because I'm
Game of the year, early
game of the
nominee.
year, early nominee. But yeah, man, I'm super excited. Week 0, it's one of those things that kind of get your feet wet, to prepare
It's
for that week
preseason
1.
college
It's
football.
preseason of college football that actually matters. But the games are so awkward and imbalanced.
I think the number one game is going to be
It's gonna
a
be a
good
fun one. Yep,
watch.
yep.
I
Florida
mean,
State,
last
Georgia
year's
Tech.
Delma
Yep.
game was horrendous, but I think we're going to see a good football game at 11 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's gonna be fun. So, last thing before we sign off, guys. It's been fun. Closing thoughts for me. I'm super excited for the season. I'm super excited to put an episode out a week for you guys. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this. I will say we're learning as we go, learning how to use different type of streaming platforms and recording platforms, and learning what's working and what's not working. The quality is going to get better as we go. Some of the audio issues will get fixed while we go, but we're super excited about this. But most importantly, as I mentioned in the intro, this is a place where we come and we congregate and we have fun talking about the thing that we love and that we hold so high in our hearts and in our lives. And it's college football, man. We just love college football. Nick and I, if we weren't doing this, we would be on the phone right now, probably yelling and screaming at each other about college football a little bit more aggressively, a little bit more violently, with a little bit more hot takes, probably more from my end, just to get under Nick's skin. But the reality of it is, man, he's one of the best people to talk football about, and I'm super excited to be doing this for the next couple of years, or next couple of years, hopefully, and just kind of make something of it. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Nick, closing thoughts?
Couldn't have said it better. I'm so ready for football to be back. I feel like it came so quickly. I, you know, that's what she said. I guess. Oh, God.
Brother, you're supposed to keep this PG, man. I didn't say a single
That
F word this whole time.
that
I
was
didn't
a
say a single F word this whole time. I said maybe one cuss word this whole time. You know how my mouth is, and you had to say that at the very end and ruin all of this.
That was really an accident, and
I mean,
let
it
me
is.
let
It
me let me
is.
re let me
It is
restart. Let
almost
me
midnight,
restart.
brother. It is almost midnight. So,
Listen, I'm just ready for football. We're probably talking to ourselves here at this late episode. Nobody's watching at this point. Um, but hey, maybe someone is. Maybe Joel Klatt sees this or something, and he's like, these guys got to get brought on at Fox. I got nothing more to say about it.
man, this was fun. This is the technically second episode, but first episode of the Saturday Sermon College Football Show, the home of college football, the church of college football. Good night, guys.